Good afternoon. I'm Gabby Salzberger, and I have great pleasure in welcoming you to this very special session of the Doha Forum, which is devoted to discussions about important issues and opportunities in Africa. We believe the conversations you're going to hear today will be thoughtful, illuminating, and perhaps provocative at times. As you will also hear, we expect these panel discussions to be a preview of sorts for a more extensive Doha convening that will be focused on Africa. And the driving force behind this larger initiative, which unfortunately was delayed because of COVID, has been the chairperson of Qatar Museums and the Doha Film Institute, Her Excellency Sheikha Al Mayasa bin Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani. It is no exaggeration to say that Her Excellency is at the forefront of positive change in world culture today. With an energy that few people can match, I know for sure I cannot, and an ambition and effectiveness that are unsurpassed anywhere, she has developed an astonishing string of superb institutions, programs, and events that are transforming life for people in Qatar. Her purpose, first and foremost, is to meet the goals of her nation as a leading proponent of the arts, education, and the economic power of the creative industries. And with profound understanding, she's been doing this and at the same time achieving her remarkable mission while reaching out to other nations and their people around the world, including the people and nations of Africa, which brings us here today. And we so appreciate people coming from all over the world to join us. To begin today's very important conversations, I have the great privilege and honor of introducing Her Excellency Sheikha Mayasa.
Thank you, Gabby. I'm flattered. I don't know if I meet all of that description, but thank you. Honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, under the patronage of His Highness, the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim, it gives me great pleasure to welcome this outstanding gathering of African heads of states, leaders in government, businesses, non-government affairs, and their distinguished counterparts from my own nation, Qatar. We are convened at an event of deep significance and extraordinary promise, the very first Qatar African Business Forum. Our purpose today is to discuss the business opportunities that can empower countries of Africa over the next decade and how Qatar may be a partner in these developments. These wide-ranging discussions will concern economic investments, but also the important issues of social and cultural developments, which increases the understanding among nations, builds trust, and enables people to learn from one another. These factors are essential to creating a climate for growth, for economic growth, and they are precisely what this forum's participants will achieve through conversations that will begin here and continue far into the future. With this in mind, it is especially exciting to me that we are holding this event as we launch Qatar's most recent Year of Culture. Each year since 2012, we have devoted a full year of strengthened bilateral relations with another nation through a platform of cultural exchange and dialogue. This year, as we host the FIFA World Cup 2022, we are sharing the Year of Culture with 24 nations across the region of the Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia. We will celebrate their people with specially curated exhibitions, performances, festivals, and much more. Maybe at the World Cup final, we'll even celebrate the victory of an African team, as the Confederation of the African Football predicted. Today's forum has been initiated with the support of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Qatar Investment Authority. I am grateful for their far-sighted endorsement of this project to link officials, entrepreneurs, and creative talent from Qatar and the countries of Africa with the aim of fostering closer ties and productive partnerships. From now on, the Doha Forum will always include a focus on Africa, and every other year, these discussions will be brought to an African country to continue building bridges between our two continents. I especially want to express my personal thanks to Fred Swaneker, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, and Gabby Salzberger for working with me and my teams on putting together an exciting panel on topics related to Africa. I'm no expert on Africa, and I'm here to learn from you about the things that you're doing and find the dots to connect what we're doing to build those bridges. The idea of this Qatar African Business Forum emerged during discussions and plannings for Fashion for Relief charity event that will be held in Doha in October with Education Above All's Foundation, established by my mother, Her Highness Sheikh Hamouza bint Nasser. We look forward to hosting the Fashion for Relief event as part of our hashtag Qatar Creates Week. The proceeds will enable investments in creative and young business talent with a particular focus on Africa, providing apprenticeship, after-school programs, and university programs, and much more. Only last month, people around the world learned that a partnership, including Qatar Energy and the National Petroleum Corporation of Namibia, has successfully concluded deep water drilling of an offshore discovery in Namibia. This discovery has tremendous implications for the people of Namibia, as we understand very well in Qatar, because it was not too long ago that we too established our potential to be a hydrocarbon exporting nation. We know about the immediate impact as well as the secondary stream investment that flows from this discovery. And we are proud to be partners with Namibia at this moment because we recognize that this is a dream come true. We recognize something else as well, that change can come rapidly to societies. As it does, it is imperative for people to be able to articulate their dreams and share them with others. I have been deeply moved to see films from Algeria, Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia, Sudan, and elsewhere that have given contemporary expression and voices to the great cultural wealth of African nations while giving a voice to the experiences and aspiration of people in these evolving societies. It means a great deal to me that we have been able to support these filmmakers through the Doha Film Institute, as well as initiatives such as a filmmaking residency that we partnered with Miraner in Uganda. Such culture initiatives can have wide-reaching positive outcomes. Consider how just last month, as part of our explorations for the National Museum of Qatar, we discovered a chain of pearl beads that is 6,500 years old. So when people say Qatar is 50 years old, that we know is not correct. As a culture artifact, a chain of pearls may seem very small, almost insignificant, when compared with monuments such as the pyramids of Giza. But these pearls speak to us of a way of life in Qatar, where for millennia people dared to dive to the bottom sea, weighted with rocks, to bring up these tiny treasures. And once the pearls were in hand, they became a medium of exchange in the Indian Ocean trade route, which included Qatar as it stretched from Africa to China. Our National Museum of Qatar has wonderful exhibitions about the culture of pearl diving. I know there is also a museum in Zanzibar that shows how trade ran from Mombasa to Zanzibar to Cochin. As materials of good flowed along this route, so did culture expressions. One form of exchange empowered the other. And today, in countries around the world, culture is a major economic force. The creative industries, including fashion, design, and media, account for billions of dollars in revenue a year and are one of the fastest growing sector jobs of growth. This is why investments in culture can provide encouragement and opportunity to everyone, but especially to the young, who in their billions make up so much of this world. Tomorrow at the Doha Forum, we will have a panel about the importance of the creative economy to young people, especially in which we will share our own experiences and welcome others to be our partners in creating similar economic diversification and growth. This is one of many ways in which we want to be part of building a network of people from around the world who are interested and invested in Africa. And Qatar is committed to supporting this vision under the patronage of my brother, the Emir of Qatar, His Highness Sheikh Tamim. I want to conclude by expressing my gratitude to Mansour Al-Mahmoud and his team at the Qatar Investment Authority for their deeply appreciative support and assistance in today's event, and to Lulu Al-Khater and her team at the Doha Forum for their valuable insights. And as we are celebrating the 20th anniversary, I can't think of a better time to launch such an initiative. So thank you all for joining us, and I look forward to learning from the panelists and about all the powers of Africa. So thank you so much.
And the moderator to join us now.
right, good afternoon, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. And my name is Eshun. I'm the CEO of Deloitte based in Nairobi. Actually, this seat, like the Excellency spoke about, was supposed to be for Fred Swanica. So, you know, Fred talks a lot about doing hard things. So just last night, Fred could not make it and then requested that I moderate the session. So it's a real privilege to have this opportunity to focus on a topic which is of great importance to this continent. Flying into Qatar, I reflected on a couple of things. I miss normal. I miss working with my colleagues and my clients. I miss coming into a meeting like this. And I miss a lot of things. But I also miss the people that, and the friends and the family that I lost to COVID. In Africa, COVID actually infected 12 million people. And it killed over 252,000. There were some winners and losers in the last 2 or 3 years. And if you reflect, there was a big headline in Accra, Ghana, where I come from, that the diagnostic companies were making a lot of money. There were losers. The tourism sector suffered a lot in Africa. But Africa is very resilient. And a lot of you remember 2.5 years ago, the conversation was, this COVID is going to decimate Africa. But I don't think it did happen. So today's conversation is very, very interesting. It's looking at the recovery after COVID. What is the next 2 to 3 years going to look like? And we have to reflect on that in the midst of some of the climate challenges that we are facing and the reality of the Ukraine war and how it's going to impact us in Africa. So ladies and gentlemen, we have 5 amazing Africans with us today. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about their background. I think you can get that information in the program. But I want us to spend the next 35 to 40 minutes in some great conversation. So with us today, our first panelist is Her Excellency Kandia Kamara, who is the Minister for Foreign Affairs in Côte d'Ivoire. So welcome. The second panelist, His Excellency Godwin Obaseki. He is a governor of Edo State in Nigeria, so welcome. Our third panelist is Charles Murito. Charles is a director of Sub-Saharan Africa for Government Affairs and Public Policy for Google. Charles. Charles is a friend, and I don't get to see Charles in Nairobi, and I'm meeting Charles in Doha. Our fourth panelist is Walé Adeosun. He is the Chief Investment Officer at Kuramo Capital Management. Welcome. And last but not least is an I call Ken, another friend of mine that I haven't seen for a long time, a serial entrepreneur. He is the founder of Cellulant in Kenya. So welcome. So what I want to do is to ask our panelists, and you will have just 1.5 minutes to answer this question. What would you see the next 3 to 5 years look like in the big cities of Nairobi, Lagos, Abidjan, and Johannesburg? And I want you to focus on probably 2 areas, the health sector and our ways of life. What would be the social life in those big cities? And I will suggest that we start with Excellency Kamara.
The interpreters need the speaker to use a microphone for themselves to be able to hear.
Donc, je voudrais avec votre permission,
If you'll allow me, I
au
would
nom du
like,
président de
on
de
behalf
Côte
of
d'Ivoire,
the
Son
President
Excellence
of
M.
the
Alassane
Republic
Ouattara,
of, Côte
remercier
d'Ivoire, His
l'émir
Excellency
du
Mr.
Qatar
Alassane Ouattara,
et
wanted to
toutes
thank
les
the Emir of
autorités
Qatar
pour
and all the
l'invitation
authorities
qu'ils nous ont
for the invitation
accordée
that they
ici,
extended to
qu'ils nous
us
ont
here,
adressée, et surtout pour toutes les
and
dispositions
above
prises
all
pour
for
rendre notre
all
séjour
the
agréable.
provisions
Merci
that
aussi
you've made
pour
to make our stay
notre
pleasant.
invitation à
Thank you
participer à ce
also
panel.
for inviting us to take part in
Alors,
this roundtable.
votre question
Well,
est
your
très
question
intéressante.
is highly interesting.
Qu'est-ce qui va se passer
What is
les
going
3
to
prochaines
happen in
années
the next 3
en Afrique
years in
et
Africa,
singulièrement en Côte d'Ivoire?
and more specifically
Il
in
faut
Côte
dire
d'Ivoire?
que nous avons quand même eu beaucoup de
Well, we have to
chance
say that
en
we were
Afrique
quite
parce que
fortunate
à
in
la survenue de la
Africa,
Covid,
because when
tout le
COVID
monde
happened,
avait
everybody
déclaré que ce
stated
serait le
that
chaos,
this would be chaos,
peut-être la fin du monde en
maybe
Afrique.
the end of the
Fort
world in
heureusement,
Africa.
grâce
Quite
au
fortunately,
plan de
thanks
riposte contre la
to
Covid,
the response plan
aujourd'hui,
against COVID,
l'Afrique
now,
se porte bien.
Africa
La
is
Côte d'Ivoire
doing
se
well.
porte bien.
Côte
C'est vrai
d'Ivoire
que
is doing well.
nous avons eu
It's true
beaucoup de
that we
difficultés par
have
rapport à la
many
pandémie,
difficulties
mais la vie
related
reprend.
to the pandemic,
Alors,
but life is
quels sont
resuming. So what
les
are
espoirs?
our hopes?
C'est en ce thème que je voulais parler.
This is what I wanted to
L'espoir
talk
est
about.
que nous
Our
avons
hope
compris
is that
qu'au
we've
niveau sanitaire,
understood that
il
in
faudrait développer les
health
infrastructures.
terms, we would need to
Il
develop
faudrait
infrastructure.
faire en sorte
We would
que
need to make
le
sure
programme sanitaire
that the
soit
health
meilleur.
program
Il
is
faudrait
improved.
des équipements.
We would
Il
need
faudrait des
equipment.
centres de santé.
We would need
Il faudrait des
health
instituts de
clinics.
recherche.
We would
Il
need
faudrait surtout
research
faire en sorte que
institutions,
l'Afrique,
and we would
et
need to make
singulièrement la
sure
Côte d'Ivoire,
that Africans, more
puisse
specifically
mettre la
Côte
population à
d'Ivoire,
l'abri
can
en
protect
procédant à la fabrication de vaccins,
population by
vaccins
being
contre la
able
Covid,
to
mais aussi
manufacture
vaccins contre
vaccines
d'autres
against
pandémies,
COVID, but
comme
also against
évidemment
other
le
pandemics
paludisme et
like
bien d'autres.
more
Et
regularly
nous avons aussi
malaria
compris que
and
le
others.
numérique
And
aujourd'hui
we've
était
also
une
understood
grande
that
opportunité pour
digital
l'Afrique
now is a great
parce que
opportunity for Africa because
avec la pandémie,
with the
nous nous
pandemic,
sommes rendus compte
we
que
realized that
c'est un outil aujourd'hui
this is a
qui
tool
permet de maintenir
that
le lien social
enables us to
et
maintain
aussi le lien
social
économique.
connections
Parce
and
que c'est
economic
grâce
connections.
au numérique
Because
que
it's
nous avons
thanks to
pu
digital that
maintenir
we've been
l'école
able to
ouverte.
keep schools
C'est grâce au
open,
numérique
that
que les
with
étudiants ont
digital,
gardé le contact
students could stay in
avec les
contact
universités,
with
avec les enseignants.
universities, with
C'est grâce au
teachers.
numérique
It's
aussi
thanks to
que
digital as
les
well
emplois ont pu
that
être,
jobs
ont
could
pu
be
être préservés puisque
preserved
le travail a continué, même si
because
c'était le travail à
work
distance.
continued,
Donc
although it was
aujourd'hui,
remote
le
work.
numérique
So
le
now
numérique est aujourd'hui
digital
une grande
is a
opportunité
great
pour
opportunity
l'Afrique.
for
Et je
Africa.
voudrais dire aussi
And I also
que,
wanted to say,
vous savez bien,
well, you know,
aujourd'hui c'est l'urbanisation galopante
there is
dans nos
rampant
pays africains,
urbanization in African
singulièrement en Côte
countries,
d'Ivoire.
specifically
Et
in Côte
aujourd'hui, il
d'Ivoire.
faut le développement des
And
infrastructures,
now we need to
et toutes sortes
develop
d'infrastructures,
infrastructure of all sorts.
infrastructures sanitaires,
Health
infrastructures scolaires,
school
infrastructures routières.
infrastructure,
Évidemment, le
and
transport
also, of
ne doit
course,
pas être oublié.
transport should
Et
not
aussi,
be
nous avons
left
une autre
behind.
grande opportunité
And
en
we
Côte
have a
d'Ivoire,
big
c'est le domaine
opportunity in Côte
agricole.
d'Ivoire, the
Peut-être que je pourrais
agricultural
développer après, parce que
sector.
la Côte d'Ivoire
Maybe
est
I
un
could
pays
expound on that
agricole.
because
Et
Côte
la
d'Ivoire
Côte
is
d'Ivoire est
an
le premier pays
agricultural
producteur
country.
de
It's the
cacao au monde,
biggest
le premier
producer
pays
of cocoa in the
producteur
world,
de noix de
the
cajou au
biggest,
monde, le troisième pays
producer of
producteur de
cashews,
café,
of
de
the third largest producer of coffee,
DVA.
of,
Et aussi,
rubber,
nous avons des produits
and we
miniers.
also have
Et
mining
aujourd'hui,
products.
l'espoir, mais
Now,
surtout la
our
nouvelle
hopes,
vision
but
que nous
also the
avons
new
en Côte
vision that we
d'Ivoire,
have in our
impulsée par le
country
président de la République, son
is,
Excellence Alassane
led
Ouattara,
by His
c'est de
Excellency
passer à
Alassane
l'industrialisation.
Ouattara, President of the Republic,
Cela
is to
est un
move to
impératif aujourd'hui
industrialization.
pour nous.
This is
Il
an
faut une
imperative for us.
transformation
Now we need
structurelle
to
de notre économie
structurally
à travers
transform our
l'industrialisation.
economy via
Faire en sorte que
industrialization.
dorénavant
We need
en
to make
Afrique,
sure
nous
that now
puissions
in Africa
transformer
we
nos
can
matières premières
process our
sur
raw
place.
materials
Surtout qu'avec
on
la
site,
pandémie, tout le
especially
monde a
because with the
constaté,
pandemic, everybody
c'était
saw
il n'y avait plus de
that
contact
there was
entre
no
les
more
pays
contact
développés
between
et les
developed
pays
countries
africains,
and African
entre les
countries,
producteurs
between
et les
producers
transformateurs,
and
puisqu'il n'y avait
processors,
plus de
because
voyages, il n'y avait
there
plus
was
de
no
liens.
more
Et
travel
donc,
or
cela nous a fait prendre
connectivity,
conscience
and that made
qu'il
us
fallait
realize that
dorénavant
now we
développer
needed to
la transformation des matières
develop
premières
the raw
sur
materials
place en
processing
Afrique,
industry
singulièrement
on
en Côte
site
d'Ivoire.
in Africa,
Cela
more
va permettre
specifically in Côte
évidemment
d'Ivoire,
de créer des
that
emplois
will help
pour
us
les jeunes
create
et pour les
jobs
femmes.
for
Cela va
young
permettre
people
aussi
and women.
cela
will
va
also
permettre
enable us
au monde agricole, surtout
enable the
aux
agricultural
planteurs,
world, especially
d'avoir plus de revenus Mais
crop
cela va
growers to
permettre
have to increase
d'ajouter
their
une
revenue,
plus-value
but that will
et puis
add
d'avoir des ressources
value to the
pour
country,
nos pays
and we'll
africains,
have
pour la
more
Côte
resources
d'Ivoire,
for
pour
African
continuer
countries,
son
for Côte
développement.
d'Ivoire to
Donc,
carry on with its
voici un
development.
peu
So,
les
in a
leçons que nous avons
nutshell,
tirées
these are the
vraiment de
lessons
cette
that we've
pandémie-là,
really
de
learned
la
from the
COVID-19.
pandemic, from COVID-19.
Merci. My French was
Thank you.
challenging. And I was trying so hard. I think I picked up a few points. I will ask the organizers to also help the panelists with the headphones so that we can get a translation. In the meanwhile, I will transition on to His Excellency Godwin to tell us about what you see for the next 3 to 5 years.
Thank you very much. Let me start by extending my profound appreciation to Her Excellency Princess Patricia and the organizers of this forum. I think our story in Nigeria and Edo State is not too different from that that's been expressed by Her Excellency from Côte d'Ivoire. What COVID did for us in case of Edo State and Nigeria was not so much the infection rates, or the mortality rates, because of a very young population we have in Nigeria. The infection rates were not as high, and the mortality was not as bad as we get from malaria or other diseases. What really affected us was the disruption of livelihoods. And with the lockdowns, a lot of small businesses were seriously affected. And and the use and the use of technology, the availability of technology as a response just threw up new opportunities for small businesses in particular. So what we saw in terms of a response for the healthcare response, we realized the opportunities for investments in the healthcare space and the participation of the private sector in healthcare delivery. Before now, the bulk of healthcare investments was left to government, even though the private sector was a key provider of healthcare services. So we saw testing centers, diagnostic centers springing up, and the need for those services. But for small and medium scale businesses, because they had been drained of capital as a result of the lockdown, we just showed the importance and the necessity to reinvest in that segment of the economy. So small businesses became a viable sector to put money into, because most of them began to use technology for service delivery, for production, which then leads to the other key investment opportunities that came out as a result of COVID, which is investments in technology and technology startups. So lots of younger people, particularly young people, now beginning to invest and take opportunities in the technology space. We found companies outsourcing work to young people in Nigeria and states, a place like Edo State, where young people now began to earn quite a bit of money in foreign exchange, just writing codes and writing programs for companies abroad. So that's another area we saw significant investments. But if you ask me to look out to the next 2-3 years, the Ukrainian war, for me, has created a real alarm for our food systems. With the sort of increase in food prices, particularly wheat, staples, and grains, and the rise in energy prices, we as a government now realize that we must now begin to put a lot of resources and time in agriculture and large-scale agricultural projects. Fortunately, in Edo State, we had already started investing in palm oil and had, rolled out programs where we could bring in serious investments into large-scale oil palm production as the trigger for large-scale investment in agriculture. And so the opportunity we see in the next 3 years is to first secure your food supplies by food production, and then utilize technologies and focus on small businesses.
So that's very interesting. Africa has been talking about agriculture for years. And now, the Ukraine war has shown the vulnerabilities we have. Countries like Kenya and others, rely on importation of wheat from Ukraine. And these were interesting things that we all actually found out during this the last few weeks. But let's move on from your talk about technology to Charles. Charles, because of what you do, I'm sure you have a view of where the next 2-3 years is going to look like.
Yes, thank you so much, Your Excellency, under your patronage of the Emir. Thank you for having us. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for having me and the panels up here talking about this particular topic about what's happening over the next 3 to 5 years, especially when we're thinking about the way technology and the way the youth are going to impact not just Africa, but really the world. So I want to focus on 3 things just to build on some of the things that have been discussed. The first one is around the future of work. When you think about where the world is right now, over 16% of the world's population is youth. Under 60% of Africa's population is under 24 years old by 2025. And that's a third of the world's youth globally. So when you think about Africa over the next 3 to 5 years, we must be thinking about how we're empowering those young people to be able to take the jobs of the future, and really not just jobs of the future, but to be the workforce for the world. By 2050, the statistic is that over a third of the world's workforce is going to be based in Africa. And right now, when you look at the way the technology is looking, last year, we did a developer ecosystem report that shows that there's about 720,000 developers across Africa who are certified. What's interesting about that number is that 38% of them, and this builds on your point, Your Excellency, they work for companies that are outside Africa. And that just shows the trend that's going to be coming, that Africa is going to be serving the world when it comes to the young people who are going to be needed to fill jobs in the world. There's a data point that I saw a few weeks back whereby currently as we speak, there's a 12 million job gap in the US. So imagine if we can be able to put in the right processes and policies to be able to have both virtual work more readily available, because we have high unemployment in Africa, and also visas that can be able to have people go out, learn, and come back to Africa and really deliver on the resources that are available. The second point I wanted to touch on is urbanization, because this is something that we cannot ignore. And it also ties into the point around food security. To date, there are 68 cities across Africa with over 1 million people. That number is supposed to raise to 85 by 2025. That's in the next 3 years. So we need to really be thoughtful about the way people are consuming, the way we're building eco-friendly homes, the affordability of homes in cities, because that is going to be directly correlated to security, not just food security, but geopolitical security, because when you have young people who do not have the right economic opportunities in big cities, then that destabilizes a lot of countries across the board. And then last but not least, I want to talk about how we're going to be preserving Africa's history. And this is where technology comes in. I was just talking to a friend of mine earlier and talking about a project that at Google we launched in the last 2 weeks in Mali, whereby we've preserved through the Google Arts and Culture the Mali manuscripts, and really are starting to look at how do we preserve through technology that's available now and get those resources online so that both the current populations in the world but also future generations can be able to see the history and the rich history that Africa bears. So when I look at the next 3 to 5 years, those are the 3 things that I really like to focus on. Thank you.
Okay, so this actually looks interesting because the unemployment rate in Africa is also quite worrying. By what you are predicting is the next 2 to 3 years, the future of work is changing. Africans will be supplying resources to other countries. I must say that this has actually started. A lot of my clients that I talk to are looking at attrition rate of 20 to 30%. And what is nice for young Africans is to actually be in your own country and be earning US-based salaries from other countries. So this is already happening, and you think it's going to be more in the next 3 years. Okay, so I will want to move on then to Ken. So Ken, and it's linked to the broader question that I asked. The recent mobile survey in Kenya did confirm that mobile-based transactions continue to dominate the digital transaction space. And currently, I believe it's around 79%. Is there room for further growth? And what do you see as the biggest thing in the next 1 to 3 years?
Thank you, Joe, for that question. Your Excellency, people of Qatar, thank you for having us and for listening. I'm very hopeful, actually, about Africa. And I think to think about what's going to happen the next 2 to 3 years, I reflect a little bit on just the last 2 to 3 years. So I think everybody's spoken about COVID, so I'll probably speak about the positive side of what happened. And maybe I start with a small short story. Sometime in 2017 and 2018, I ran a payments company across Africa, across 35 countries in Africa. So I was out on the road fundraising. I started off with a list of about 60 investors, went out the road. In the end, that journey took about a year and a half. I did about 400 presentations in Johannesburg, London, New York, San Francisco, and Dubai. At the end of that process, I raised about $50 million. At that time, it was the largest fundraising round for a technology company. And since then, of course, the world went through COVID. In Nairobi, we had a terrorist attack in Nairobi. So a lot of bad things happened. But in that period of time, the top 250 technology startups have raised $12 billion. In that same period of time, the number of technology startups valued at $1 billion is about 11. I think by end of this year, the estimate is that number will be about 15 or 16. So a lot of stuff has happened in a very short period of time. And so if you cast your crystal ball across the next 2 to 3 years, I think that, today, 3 months in, the amount of money that's gone into startups is more than $1 billion. So probably this year, that number is anyone's guess, maybe could be 6, could be $7 billion. You extrapolate that across the next couple of years, these startups will probably need about $150 billion of investment. Now, typically, investors are looking for 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times their money. And so when I look at that, I see that there are a lot of investors, mostly American, British, European, Chinese, that are making bets that, if we invest $12 billion in 250 technology companies, we are going to get a return of anywhere between 60 to $70 billion from Africa in the next few years. So if $100 billion of investment is going to go into this space, there's expectation that there's going to be $200, $300 billion of return. But underlying that return, of course, is a lot of technology companies, a lot of entrepreneurs that are creating employment and solving very difficult questions and systemic questions in Africa. 60% of those are in financial services, and that's where a lot of the money is going. But then there's a couple of other sectors, like e-commerce, education, health technology, agricultural technology, and so on. And so I think with all these investments going, there's a lot of wealth that is going to be created. There's a lot of transformation of livelihoods for hundreds of millions of Africans. So I think I'm very hopeful about the next 2 to 3 years. Worried, of course, about the war, worried about the pandemic, possibility of pandemic recurring, but very hopeful.
All right, thanks, Ken. And I think this is a good time when you talk about investment in startups to shift gear to Walé, who, Walé, in your role as Chief Investment Officer of Kuramo, I'm sure you're fully aware of there's been so many great successes of African startups, the likes of Flutterware, Market Force, Antler, and many others. But like Ken said, most of the funding is coming from places like the United States. Why do you think that we struggle to get funding from Africa itself and maybe from the Middle East? And what can be done differently?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Let me join everyone in saying thank you to hosts, Your Royal Highness. Everybody's been saying Excellency. I'm not sure what the protocol. And thank you, Gabby, for inviting me over today. I think the next 3 to 5 years for Africa is actually very exciting. I'll get to answer your question. I think there's some fundamental transformational shifts that are happening. And has even happened over the last 3 to 5 years. I think Ken was touching about some numbers around investments in startups. You give you some idea. In 2014, we seeded the first venture fund in sub-Saharan Africa outside of South Africa. 2014 feels like the dark ages compared to what's happening now. Well, $200 million was raised in 2015, $1 billion in 2019. Now we're hearing about $5 billion was raised in 2021. So this is exponential growth, and if you blink, those numbers are going to double in the next few years. We're very fortunate, right, in Africa that we the informal economy, or call it folks in the creative arts space, have tremendously helped us. Folks in the movies, music, fashion, you name it. They've helped Africa tremendously in terms of lowering that risk perception of the continent. And so the risk premium has gone down. And so folks are now realizing that, wait a minute, there's a new world here. And then you find young Africans that are solving problems by writing code easily. And they're learning that they can become millionaires in 5 years. Flutterwave has only been around for 5 years. And with the unintended positive consequences around the fact that, one, you have to invest, you have to build your companies with global best practices. So governance is great from day one. Like when we invest in companies now, one of the first things we do as a private equity group is trying to put in good governance. These young kids are learning good governance from day one, right? And so that's a very great unintended positive consequence. And then obviously, the second thing they're learning that is also that, wait, in 5 years I can be wealthy and I can call myself a millionaire. I want to be like Patrice or Dangote in a shorter period of time. That's encouraging a wave of young kids. And the other thing about it, if you think about a kid today that's graduating from school, pretty much anything you want to do now has a potential to generate revenues for you to succeed. When we were growing up, I wanted to be a soccer player. Mr. Infantino is here, but I obviously, that was a no-no. In Nigeria, you had to be one of those 4 or 5 professions: a lawyer, a doctor, engineer, accountant. And if you weren't one of those, you were a failure. I guess I was a failure because I wasn't any one of those. But today, if you want to be in fashion, there's opportunities. If you're an artist, great opportunity. If you want to sing, opportunity. You want to be in movies, opportunity. And they all have value chains that are providing employment across. So that lowering of the perception is what has also led to the wave of capital infusion we're seeing in the technology space now. And young Africans can write code easily, they're smart. And you know, as soon as they get into the Y Combinator, they become a millionaire, and that's happening. And that's going to continue happening because they're just solving global problems, right? I think locals, I think a number of high net worth people on the ground have invested. Obviously, we need more, but you have to have an understanding for the metrics of venture capital. You know, you're looking at eyeballs, not profit, right? So that doesn't compute with folks yet. But I think we'll get there where people will understand that, wait a minute, these young people are onto something, and everybody has to join the bandwagon for investing. The other unintended positive consequence that's happening actually is this young millionaires are also starting to invest locally as well, which is fascinating. And so I'm extremely excited about the next 3 to 5 years. I think it's going to be exponential growth, and I think if you blink, you're going to miss it.
All right, thanks very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's incredible that 30 minutes can move that fast. We just had one question per panelist, and our time is up. And Her Excellency, it looks like you need almost like a half a day to explore the opportunities in Africa. But ladies and gentlemen, you can all hear that the future, the startup play is going to be big, focus on technology. Even food security needs to be linked with technology. Export of African resources to the rest of the world is going to be a big issue. The arts, there are opportunities for the arts to play a role in the world. This has been an incredible conversation. I want to say a big thank you to all our panelists, and also it's unfortunate we couldn't get questions from the audience today, but I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Thank you everyone for coming.
So thank you again, Joe. You've done a fantastic job. It's been really a fascinating conversation. We now break for lunch. There are a number of groups that have been organized. In particular, I've been asked to announce there is a small group luncheon for some entrepreneurs. That venue has moved to the Pool Cafe. If you have any questions, there's somebody from the staff in the back. Otherwise, we look forward to having you all back later this afternoon for another Africa Forum session at 4 o'clock. So thank you again to this incredible panel, Joe. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you later this afternoon.